the purpose of this lesson is to learn what an enumeration is, how to create an enumeration, how to cast data as an enumeration, how to use case statements, and also some of the debugging techniques built into Visual Studio. An enumeration is a textual list of items that is used to describe things that are discrete states, things like months or days, or even error conditions or temperature conditions or things of that nature. For example, in older programming languages, what we would do is we'd have something like enter the person's gender, and you'd say enter 1 for male or 2 for female. Well, instead of doing that, now what we can do is we can use an enumeration, and we can do something like gender.male or gender.female. It's a lot more succinct, and it's a lot easier to understand exactly as what is being presented. Typically, we're going to use an enumeration with a drop-down list, and the reason for this is we're going to give the user a list of things that they can select from, and then when they select one of those items, then we will actually have output depending on what they selected. We're going to use the case or switch statement in conjunction with an enumeration, and what a case or switch statement is a replacement for a bunch of else-if statements. What we're going to do is we're going to see some programs where you'll have an if statement, so if this is true, then do this, else if this is true, do this, else if this is true, do this, and you'll see a whole bunch of else ifs. They get kind of confusing, they get very long to type, and they're not very user friendly. They'll get the job done, but a case statement will actually allow us to do it much quicker. The only difference is going to be that the case statement will actually allow us to have what's called fall through, which means let's say I have 2 or 3 of the if-else statements where I want the exact same output to occur for a couple that are in a row. In the if-then statements, I'd have to retype the same code. In a case statement, I can let things fall through. So I could say, okay, if the first case or the second case or the third case happen, then do this. If the fourth case or the fifth case or the sixth case happen, then do this, and so forth. What happens, though, is we need to make sure that we break our case statement, and break is actually a keyword. So we want to do a break at the end of whatever the last section of code is that should run inside of our case statement. Otherwise, that fall-through capability will allow everything to run, even things that really shouldn't run. We're also going to use some of the debugging techniques built into Visual Studio. Debugging is the process of checking your program for bugs or problems with your code. Those are going to be things like errors in your logic or your syntax. Visual Studio has some utilities built into it that allow us to easily debug our programs. There are things like breakpoints, which means I can tell the program to stop at a certain point in the program. There is the watch list, so I can keep track of values for specific variables. We have the process or the ability to step into our program, so we can go one line of code at a time to watch exactly what happens as we go through each line of code. And then we also have this thing called an instant window, which allows us to evaluate something to see if a section of code is going to work before we actually have to run the whole program. The first program that I want to make is using an enumeration. And so what I'm going to do is before my main method and inside of my class for the program, I need to define the enumeration. And the way that I do that is I use the keyword enum, and we type enum and then a space, and we're going to give it a name. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it day. And what we're going to have here is the days of the week. And so our enumeration is going to have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so forth, all the way through Saturday. All right, so my enumeration is going to contain Sunday, hopefully spell it right, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. All right, now the thing that you need to understand is that an enumeration starts with the first item being element 0. Now, an enumeration is kind of the reverse of an array. In an array, these are referenced by an index number. In an enumeration, these are referenced by their name. So what I have is I have an enumeration called day that has an item called Sunday, so I have day.Sunday, and I have day.Monday and day.Tuesday and so forth. But I can also look at these as numbers, So this is element 0, element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, I don't want that to happen. I want this to be element 1. So what I can do is from my very first item, I can set Sunday equal to 1. And what that'll do is that'll make this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now they'll be in the order that I expect to see them. What I can do now is in my main method, I actually have the ability to reference these. Alright, so I'm going to make my console.read so we can see everything that happens. Alright, I have an enumeration called day, and if I put dot, now you'll see that I have all of my days of the week. Now they're not in a particular order here. They're actually in alphabetical order, but they're not in the order that I had them up here. So what I have to do is I'd have to go through and know which ones I wanted. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have this thing called day.sunday, and what I want to do is I want to write that out to the screen. So I'm going to say console.writeLine, and I'm going to write day.sunday. Now what this will do is this will write out whatever day Sunday is to the screen. So there we go. So there's Sunday. So now I wrote day.sunday, but the actual value for day.sunday is this. The thing is that I want to know what position Sunday is at, or what position Monday is at, or so forth. If I were to leave it like this, I only get the word, but if I want to get the location, what I have to do is I have to recast this thing as an integer. So if I cast it, if I put integer in parentheses in front of it, we tell it take whatever the day Sunday is, cast it as an integer, and write that out to the console. And now we get 1 because that's at position 1. Alright, if I were to do something like day dot, let's say Thursday, day.Thursday is 5. So what we're doing here is we can actually look at it as either the day name or the number that it represents in the order that it is in here. Alright, so the question is, why would we actually use these things? A lot of times you'll encounter errors in a program that we need to try to trap. So let's say I get an error with Windows and the error is a 4044. Well, what does that mean? Okay, so to the computer an error 4044 is something. To me, I have no clue what it is, so I'd have to go and look it up somewhere, and there used to be a list of all these error codes online that you had to go look up or in some sort of manual somewhere. Nowadays, in our current programs, what we can actually do is if you get an error, we can actually display on the screen or in the event logger somewhere a descriptive set of text to explain exactly why it happened. So the enumeration is actually very good at allowing us to be more descriptive with our text. Alright, I'm going to write this program so that we can ask the user to type in the day of the week that they want to see. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say console.writeLine and enter the day of the week as an integer, 1 through 7. Okay, so what we're doing is we're giving a cue here as to what they have to actually type. And we're not going to make this a write line, we'll make it a write. And then what I want to do is I'm going to take whatever the user types in, and I want to put that into an integer value. So I'm going to make a new integer value called int day, and we're going to set this equal to whatever we read in from the console. So we're going to do console.readLine, but we have to convert it to an integer. So I'm going to convert.toInt32 and whatever we read in from the line on the console. Alright, so we're going to let the user type in a number, 1 through 7, and then when they type in 1 through 7, then what we're going to do is we're going to display, we're going to put that into int day. Alright, so that's the first thing. So then what we want to do is we want to show the user which one they selected. So I'm going to do console.writeLine, you selected, and we're going to do 0 here, so that's our placeholder. And then we're going to select int day. Okay, so we can put in what number they selected. So let's try this. Alright, so what day of the week? 3, and then you selected 3. Okay, but I don't want to see the number 3 here. I want to see what day they actually selected. And what I can do is I can cast this number as if it were a day. So I'm going to take this integer value, cast it as a day, and then now what will happen is it'll show to me what day of the week they selected. So now you selected Tuesday. So Sunday is 1, Monday is 2, Tuesday is 3. Alright, so why do I care about this? Alright, so what we're going to do is, let's say I want to see what hours a store is open. Alright, so let's do this the old-fashioned way. What I would do is I would say something like if int day is equal to 1, then we would do something like console.writeLine. Let's say we're closed. Monday through Thursday the store is closed. It's only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All right, so Sunday it's open from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Okay, and then else if, and then int day is equal to 2, which is Monday. Then we're going to do console.writeLine and closed. Else if int day is equal to 3, console.writeLine closed. And you can see how this is very quickly going to be kind of cumbersome because we're going to have to keep typing the same code for each of these days that were closed. All right, so what if I don't want it to be 1, 2, 3? What if I want it to be something like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday? All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this, this 1, and I want to make it where if the day is not 1, but instead it's Tuesday. So then we can keep track of what day of the week it is. Okay, so actually, not Tuesday, it would be Sunday. So let's say day.Sunday. Okay, now the catch is I can't compare these because this is an integer value and this is an enumeration. But what I can do is I can take my day and I can cast it as an integer. And then now what it will do is if the user selected Sunday, then we are open these days. And then same thing here, I can say if the day.Monday, and then here I can say, cast it as an int, day.Tuesday. Now what I can do is when I go back through my code and I look at it, I don't have to try to figure out what day 3 is. I can say if it's Tuesday, this is our hours. If it's Monday, these are hours. If it's Sunday, these are hours. And it makes it a lot easier for me to try to figure out what the day is for each of these sections of code. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just finish these real quick. So int day is equal to, cast as an integer, day.Wednesday, and then console.writeLine, close, because we're only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Else if int day is equal to, cast as an integer, day.Thursday, and once again we're closed. Else if int day is equal to, cast as an integer, day.Friday. Okay, so now Friday we're open a lot later. So now we're open from, say, 8 to 5. Okay, and then we have Saturday. So int day is equal to int day.Saturday. Then we're going to say we're open to, or open from, line. We're open from, let's say, 8 to 2 again. So we're going to be open from 8 to 2. All right, so the problem is, what if I don't enter something like, and I didn't close this, so let's say I don't enter something that falls under the Monday through Saturday. I don't enter one of the numbers for it. Okay, so how do I handle that? Well, what I'm going to have is the very last one that just simply says console.writeLine invalid day. Okay, so if you select one that is valid, so 1 through 7, then we'll give you the hours for that day. Otherwise, we're going to tell you that it was an invalid day. All right, so if I run this and I say day 3, which was Tuesday, you selected Tuesday, they're closed. All right, so if I say something like Friday, which is day 6, they're open from 8 to 5. If I select day 7, which is Saturday, we're open from 8 to 2. And if I select day 1, which is Sunday, we're open from 10 to 2. So what I can do is I can ask you for a number, and based on the number that you selected, I can specify what the day and time is. All right, so a bunch of else if statements, and it gets very confusing very fast. We want to shorten that. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use a switch statement instead. So instead of all of these else if statements, I'm going to make a switch statement, and pardon me, I'm going to make it day. We're going to take int day and cast it as the enumeration of day. All right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to allow the user to select which of the cases they need. Okay, so what we're going to have are a bunch of case statements now. So if they selected, day dot Sunday, then this is the stuff that we're going to have. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to create a string value that is just responsible for holding the output. So let's call it str output. And that's a string value. All right, so what we're going to do is in this case, we're going to set str output equal to whatever time we're open, so 10 to 2. Okay, and then what I have to do is I have to type this word break, and the word break would cause it to exit this entire switch statement. Because what will happen is when I type the next case statement, I'm going to type day.Monday. Okay, so now when I type day.Monday, Monday is going to be responsible for stating that we're closed. And actually, I realized I forgot a colon here. So after the actual case, you put a colon. All right, so what we're going to say here is str output is we're closed. Okay, and then break. All right, and then the next one is going to be case day.Tuesday. And here we're going to say str output is equal to closed. Okay, so far not a whole lot shorter, but I'm going to show you how to make it shorter here in a minute. Okay, then we have case day.Wednesday and str output. Once again, we're closed. We break afterwards. Okay, case day.Thursday, str output. Once again, we're closed. Like I said, not a whole lot shorter yet, but we're going to get there in just a minute. Okay, case day.Friday. Okay, now str output, we're open from 8 to 5. And then break. And it gets really touchy if you don't include your semicolons. And then case day.Saturday. And str output is we're open from, what was it, 8 to 2, I think we said? Yeah, 8 to 2. Okay, now what I'm going to do is at the end, I'm going to put one more case. And what I'm going to do is just type the word default. And default just simply means if it doesn't match any of these other cases, then what should it have? And so what I'm going to say is str output is equal to invalid day. And then break. All right, so like I said, not a whole lot shorter. Actually, it's probably a little bit longer than this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these and Got a couple of extra line breaks in here that we don't need. All right, so here's where the fall through comes in. So notice all of these say closed. Every one of these is that we're closed. What I can actually do is for Monday, I can delete the text. So everything that's in Monday, I can get rid of. And then everything that is in Tuesday, I can get rid of. And then everything that is in Wednesday, I can get rid of. Because now what I do is I'm allowing it to fall through that if it matches Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, it'll say that we're closed and then it breaks. But if it matches Sunday, it does this stuff and breaks. If it matches Friday, it does this stuff and breaks. And if it matches Saturday, it does this stuff and breaks. Okay, so then what I can do is I can say console.writeLine. We are open from, or the other option is, let's make it hours, and then just do a substitution here, and then str output. Okay, so now depending on what day they select would dictate what hours we actually run. So if they select day 1, you select a Sunday, hours are 10 to 2. Okay, run it again. Select Monday, you select a Monday, hours are closed. Now I didn't define that we're closed for Monday, but because I didn't define a break here, it keeps going down until it finds the next section of code, and then it will break. So if I enter Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, they are all going to say closed, regardless of what day I selected. Okay, so just to show that that works, we're going to do day 3 is Tuesday closed, day 4, Wednesday closed, day 5 is Thursday, we're closed, day 6, Friday, we're open from 8 to 5, and then Saturday is 8 to 2. So what this does, by using the enumeration, I can allow the user to select the dates. And then what we would actually do in a GUI-based application is this would allow the user to select these from a drop-down box. So they could simply select that they want a specific date, and then once they select the date, then we can display what the hours are based on the time that is listed. I want to show you some of the debugging capabilities that we have in Visual Studio. This program doesn't have a whole lot to it, so it's not going to show a whole lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up one of the programs that we worked on a prior lesson that is actually more involved and has more variables in it so that you can see what the debugging options are. Alright, this is our project that we were working on in lesson 5. This is our GUI-based application where we type in 2 numbers and we click add numbers, it adds them together and provides a label here. And the label, we called it LBL output, we just simply had that down here, and displayed the sum of number 1 and number 2 equals, and then whatever the sum was of the 2. In this program we had some variables. We had the variable coming from the text box as a string for the number 1 and number 2. We convert that to a double, so we had the DVL number 1, DVL number 2, and then at some point we add those 2 numbers together and then we end up with DVL total. And then we provide output on the screen. What I want to do is I want to show you how you can do some basic debugging techniques. You'll notice there's a little gray bar over here to the left of your numbers. This is your area for creating what are called breakpoints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and I get a little stop sign here, and essentially what it's doing is it's telling you that it's going to stop when it gets to this section of code. Now when I run my program, and notice I'm in debug mode by the way, when I run my program I type 3 and 5, everything works normally until it gets to this point. And what it's going to do is when I click add numbers, it gets into here, it will declare these variables, and then it will pause right here. So click add numbers, and you'll notice that it actually has a pause and it's highlighted. And what happens now is I can look at this and I can see what is in the text box. So if I hover over this, you'll see that it says tbx number 1.text, and then it says 3. And then tbx number 2 has a 5 in it. But as of yet, it hasn't actually assigned this to str number. So what I want to do is I want to see what it's going to do on the next step. So up here at the top I have some buttons that I can use, and I can also come up here to the debug menu, and I have step into, step over, and step out. Those are the biggies that I'm going to be using. They're also listed right here. And if you notice, it's also F11. But what will happen is this is yellow. This is the step that is going to run next. It hasn't actually run the step yet. So right now, if I just hover over str number 1, you'll see that str number 1 is null. Alright, so I want to click this step into, and now if I hover over str number 1, it is actually set to 3. Alright, I want to keep an eye on this str number 1, and I want to keep an eye on this str number 2. What I can do is I can right click on it, and I can add a watch, and you'll notice that it shows up down here. And so what that'll do is it'll keep an eye on the value for that particular variable. Okay, so I want to look at str number 2 also. I'm going to add a watch, and right now it's null, which null means that no value has been set. Okay, I can do the same thing for dbl1, dbl number 2, and then dbl total. So I want to keep an eye on my variables. Alright, so now I'm going to step into, this is yellow, this is the next thing it's going to run, which means it's going to take my 5 that's currently in that text box. It'll put it over here into str number 2, and we'll be able to see that down here in just a second. So there you go. Now we have a 5 there. Now this is yellow. It's going to convert str number 1, which is 3. Notice 3 inside of quotes. Therefore it's a text string. And it also says string here. And then when I click the step into, it will put that into dbl1. So it's going to convert it to a double. So notice it's 3.0. It's going to do the same thing with str number 2, which is 5 as a text string. It's going to convert it to a double and stick it into dbl number 2. And now you see now we have 5.0. And then if you come down here, you'll notice that dbl number 1 is 3.0, dbl number 2 is 5.0, dbl total right now is still set to 0. Alright, so if I step into it, then it actually takes and adds those two things together. And then now what I can look at is the dbl number 1 is 3, dbl number 2 is 5, dbl total is 8. And so when I click the step into button now, it will continue running the program, and now it actually displays the label on the screen. So what I can do is I can use this to be able to step into the program, and I can go through my program step by step and see exactly what everything is doing, and I can watch these variables. Now the nice thing with these watches though is when I go back through my program, it's going to keep an eye on those. So if I do 6 and 8 and add the numbers, it wipes all those out, but now it's going to watch those same variables for me, and I don't have to go back and try to look at each one individually next time. So now it'll keep an eye on them. As I step into the program, it will fill in the values for me, and I can watch to see what the totals are for all of those. So if I have things where I have variables in it that I want to know what the value is of the variable, I can either just simply hover over it, or I can set a watch for it, but either way I have to set a breakpoint before I can actually do this. One more thing that I have available to me is called the watch window. Now the watch window is used for me to be able to evaluate something before I run my program. So let's say I want to know what the outcome is of if 3 is equal to 3. Alright, so I want to bring up the watch window, and we're going to get it to show us what 3 equals 3 is equal to. Not the watch window, it's actually the immediate window, but I want to go up here to Debug, to Windows, and then Immediate. And there is actually a keyboard shortcut for this. It's Control-Alt-I as an immediate. And what this will allow me to do is something like 3 equals to 3. And then when I press enter, it will actually tell me the output of it. So if I'm trying to evaluate if something is true or not, I actually can issue those commands right here in the immediate window and see it right away as to what the output is going to be for those particular commands. In this lesson, you learned what an enumeration is. You learned how to create an enumeration, how to cast data as an enumeration, and how to cast enumerations as integers and integers as an enumeration. You learned how to use a case statement and how that is an alternative to a whole bunch of else-if statements, and also how we can use the follow-through feature. And then you also learned about some of the debugging features built into Visual Studio.